Hello, 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 and welcome to Cannesversation, a new podcast coming to you from the 76th edition of the Cannes Film Festival, where we'll talk about the day-to-day ongoing splashing on the Croisette. I'm Eliana, and I'm joined here by Patrick.
Hi.
Between the period of May 16th and May 27th, we will see the full-on spectacle. I remember last year I saw a high heel in a trash bin, and I think that was very telling of what Cannes is like. We have around 80,000 people who will be arriving, around 4,000 journalists. There's the films, there's a film market, and there's networking. This is my first year. No, this is not. This is my second year at Cannes. I've taken a cinephile accreditation, and this is
my third time.
Your third time. Now tell me a little bit about yourself, Patrick.
Yeah, so I've been covering Cannes for 3 years now, or this is my third year, and I'm doing this for the German website Movie Break. And yeah, the first time that I went here was the first time after or still amidst the pandemic, which was quite a good time to be here, ironically, because it was, in my opinion, the one edition with the best movie lineup in recent history. And yeah, I've been enjoying myself here very much these past 3 years, and I hope this year will make no exception.
Mm-hmm. Today we're the 17th, so we're already in the second day of Cannes, and it already feels like there was a sleepless night, even though things are just getting started. So you have to wake up at 7 a.m. to get tickets.
Right, every day, because that's how the reservation works. And if you check Twitter or something, you will always see people complaining about the website, how it crashes on people. People get annoyed that they don't get the tickets. I myself have to say that usually it has been working pretty well this year for me, which is really no comparison to last year's, where often the website, at least for the first 1, 2, or even 3 days, was really out of order. This year, I have to say, I maybe wasted 1 second or so when I tried to refresh a website and then I didn't get the Scorsese film, which is perhaps the most sought after here in Cannes. So I will see if I can still find a way to sneak in there, but doesn't look too good. But apart from that, I'm really satisfied with how it works this year, and it really seems to have improved in that respect to the previous years.
I see. My cinephile accreditation allows me to get into the reservation system at 9 a.m. So there's a bit of a lag between my access and your access, but that's to be expected, as this is a very inclusive and exclusive film festival. And the coveted accreditations fall under a few different categories. Your press, I'm cinephile. There's also the market badge, as well as for professional cinema accreditation.
Yeah, and then there's this 3 days in Cannes or something.
Yes, 3 days in Cannes, which is open for people who are between the ages of 18 and 28.
Perhaps we should talk a bit about the films you can expect us to cover during the next days, and start with the film that we're about to see in perhaps 2 hours or even less. And this is Steve McQueen's Occupied City. This is the film that he made together with his wife, Bianca Stigter. I don't know if that is how you pronounce her name. She's from the Netherlands. And if you follow especially documentary filmmaking, you may have come across her name because she made this film 3 minutes, A Lengthening. And this was also historical. So here, Steve McQueen talks about the city of Amsterdam, where I think he at least part-time lives with his wife, and Amsterdam under Nazi rule. And in this first film by her wife, who's now credited as providing the narrative that analyze the film. Just as in her film, which was really just picking 3 minutes, I think also from the Third World War, and you have some footage, and the film would stop at frames. Maybe it's a sort of frame by frame where you have this 3 minutes of footage, and then there is a narration that tells you about what's happening here, what you can see. And Steve McQueen here apparently shot more than 36 hours of footage, and he cut it down to a still respectable amount of time of like 4 hours and 30 minutes or so. And do you have any expectations regarding that film?
I expect that, well, this will be a very long film, and I have heard that this year, the Cannes Film Festival, just in general, films are getting longer and longer. This film is in competition? Is that
No, it's out of competition.
It's out of competition. Okay. I believe it seems like a relic from the past, an intermission.
Right. Even though I don't know if when we see it at the festival, it will have an intermission as well, but journalists who are already able to see it, they reported that there's an intermission. So I hope it's sort of embedded in the movie, and not just, if it's not on Cannes, to tell whether there's an intermission or not. I hope it's the decision by the filmmaker that is then respected. So that would be nice. Yeah. So then I will see, and I don't know, do you also have a ticket for the Koreeda film, Monster?
I have a ticket for that on the 18th.
Okay. Yeah. So I'll see it as often, I think. You'll see that, or you'll hear that when you listen to our podcast, that I will often see films earlier than Eliana, just because she has a different accreditation than I. But I think there's a strong possibility that we will end up seeing many of the same films, so you will have different perspectives on these films. And so Monster, can you tell us a bit about Monster? Or should I go on here? Okay. So Monster is the new film by the Japanese filmmaker Hirokazu Koreeda. And it's the first film in Japanese, and I think also taking place in Japan for years, because his last two films, La Vérité in 2019, and which followed his Palme d'Or winning Shoplifters in 2018. La Vérité, that took place in France and starred Juliette Binoche and Catherine Deneuve and Ethan Hawke. And Broker, then last year, took place in Korea. So this is really his return to Japan, and from what I've heard so far, this is probably for the better, because I must say I wasn't a big fan of his past two films. I mean, they seem to get back to his original motif, really, which is family, and how family can sort of assume very different forms, and how there should not be one form of family, one model of family. But it does get a bit, repetitive if you see that play out again and again throughout his career. And I assume that this year there is, at least thematically, there's also something different going on, because you said there's a sort of it does remind you just the premise of the film, which is a story told by from three perspectives. It is a bit reminiscent of Rashomon. And so we'll see how that plays out. But the general premise here is that there is a teacher, a mother, and a son. And one day the son starts behaving weirdly, not normally, and the mother is requiring an answer for where they would be. And then we see different versions of how this came about. So that's going to be interesting, I think. What are we then going to see? Le Retour by Catherine Corsini.
I will also be seeing that on the 18th. Yes.
Yeah, and we have been following a bit of little scandals about that film.
There are quite a few little scandals that are sprinkling Cannes, but
Right.
please go ahead.
So that had, I suppose, there were two sources for that. One was that there, in the film, which is, I think, a sort of homecoming story, and it's about class, I think. So there is a sort of housemaid or something that is working for wealthy people, and she returns to an island where she's originally from, I think. But no one really talked so much about the film, because the film had two scandals that really dominated the coverage of the film. Also because this is the record-breaking seventh female filmmaker in the lineup of the competition. So there have never been 7 filmmakers in a year, which is quite upsetting if you look at I think overall it's 20 filmmakers,
yes,
right?
That's correct.
Yeah. So I wonder if we'll see even more in the upcoming years. But in any case, so this film stars or has a masturbation scene in there. And in the coverage, it was people talked about that this was not part of the original script, which is why certain funding was withdrawn, because it was a scene that was not greenlit by the producers. But and then this is underage masturbation. But as we could hear later, as the filmmaker clarified, there's no nudity at all. It's just really playing with our imagination that we see maybe close-up of the face or something. So I wonder if really any of the allegations that were brought up as well, if they turn out to be justified. These allegations were really just anonymously mediated, basically. And I wonder if there will be more controversy when the film eventually hits La Croisette here. But there is one more film that we are both looking forward to, I think, and this is The Sweet East by Sean Price Williams.
Yes.
So, and Sean Price Williams has shot a lot of films that you may have seen as a cinephile, especially if you are into American art house films. So he has shot films of the 70s, I think Heaven Knows What and Good Time. He shot films by Alex Ross Perry, who's also an acclaimed filmmaker from the US. Is there something that comes to mind when you think of that film? Or
he was a cinematographer for Funny Pages, which we saw. Owen Klein.
Exactly, the debut, right?
Debut that was also produced by the Safdie brothers.
Quite a nasty film.
It was.
But we did sort of like it, I suppose.
Yes, and he's also was a cinematographer. He was also the cinematographer for Abel Ferrara's Zeros and Ones.
Right. Yeah. So you may have seen his work before as a DP, and now this is his debut, where he teams up with Nick Pinkerton, who's a film critic. And they both also have a history in New York City working at Kim's Video, which you may have heard of. It's this legendary store in the East Village that had a lot of people that would later really make a career. They would always refer to Kim's Video because at the time, before Netflix and before the digitization, people, if they wanted to see international cinema basically in New York, they would go to Kim's Video. I think this is really an iconic place, and I think a lot of people see it as quite a loss that this is not there anymore. But yeah, not to delve too much into the past here, let's stay in the present. And maybe, Eliana, could you tell me a bit about maybe your expectations regarding the festival overall, but also perhaps what films you're particularly interested in seeing this year?
Overall, my expectations are scattered. That's in brief, they're a bit scattered. We have been able to see a couple of films. I can only say that one of them I very much liked. And there are quite a few directors whose films I'm looking forward to in the official selection, if I'm able to get a ticket, which would include the new Jonathan Glazer, The Zone of Interest.
Right, just perhaps could you tell our listeners about the official selection, because it is divided into different sections, right? So perhaps we could just talk about that so people have a better idea of how this festival is structured.
Right. So the official selection this year is comprised of 20 feature films. As Patrick mentioned earlier, there'll be...
so I think just for the listeners, so the official selection is basically much more, but then there's the competition, right? And the competition is, part of the official selection.
That's true. Perhaps you should be introducing this. Yes, there is the official selection, which includes the competition, feature films, 20, which will be competing for the Palme d'Or, which will be decided by a jury of 9, headed this year by Ruben Östlund, thank you, who won the Palme d'Or, who's actually twice won the Palme d'Or,
right.
But most recently for Triangle of Sadness and also for Force Majeure.
No, not for Force Majeure. It was for
the Square.
For the Square,
okay.
Exactly.
The Square. And so then there are parallel sections, which include Critics Week, Directors Fortnight, Acid, which is the independent cinema, Un Certain Regard.
Right.
And each one is themed to a degree. For example, Directors Fortnight exists to give new incoming directors a platform for them to debut, perhaps a feature, or
I think often it's also the second or third film, maybe. Because I do remember that Mia Hansen-Lowe, for instance, was there for Bergman Island, and of course she's an established filmmaker. But principally that's the case, right? And then there are, of course, these out of competition films that create a lot of buzz here. Like we have a Pixar film, Elemental, I think, and we have, of course, the big event Martin Scorsese with what's the title again? Killers of the Flower Moon, and then we have, what else do we have? Last year we had Top Gun here that sort of fulfilled that function.
Yes.
And then there was one, of course, we have the new Indiana Jones, which is a big thing here, the new James Mangold thing, the new James Mangold flick. And perhaps is there something else that we should talk here about? So just the films you look forward to, Eliana.
Speaking of these special screenings in which these out-of-competition films will be shown, I'm looking forward to, and I have a ticket to, the Anselm film by Wim Wenders.
His second film here.
That's right, because he has one film that is also in competition,
right,
called Perfect Days, which will take place in Japan.
And you are one of the lucky ones, I think, because Anselm, only, about the artist Anselm Kiefer, only has one screening here. And it's also a 3D film,
yes.
So it's quite exciting, I think.
I'm looking forward to putting on those glasses. It is a bit strange. There's only one screening for the Scorsese. There's only one screening for the Anselm Kiefer. And
there are two for the Scorsese, but one is only press. So.
I see.
Right. So, and regarding other films you look forward to?
I'm also quite looking forward to the Acid section and the Cannes Classics section.
Right.
The Acid section, I'm looking forward to two films, one called On the Edge by Nicola Peduzzi. He previously has been in the Acid section. This film will be about how care takes place in an institution, how a doctor who will navigate from the emergency room to the intensive care unit as he meets with multiple patients with different mental disorders. And it seems, according to the press, that it will question the efficacy of his position within the entire medical sector.
Right, and I think just the still of it looks like, this place of in-betweenness, right? Because I think it's the staircase, like as if someone is permanently on the run,
Yes.
from one place to
and
the
it's
other.
slightly spiraling too,
Right.
so there's a chaotic yet still feeling to
Right.
it. Speaking of
This is, of course, very niche, right? We should acknowledge that, the acid category is maybe the most niche category here.
Speaking also of such places, I'm also looking forward to seeing In the Rear View by Maciek Hamela.
Okay.
I'm not entirely sure how to pronounce that name, which will be about a Polish vehicle that traverses the roads of Ukraine, and all the people on board are evacuating following Russian invasion. So it will also be I anticipate it to be a very fragile and transitory film that will be interesting to see from this perspective of a non-place, a non-space,
Right.
and all, I believe, taking place in the back of a car.
Yeah, and speaking of the war in Ukraine, last year we had here, I think, a Zoom call with President Zelensky, and this year the acknowledgement at the opening gala last night was a poem read by Catherine Deneuve on stage, and this was widely applauded, of course, just to see that okay, it's still not entirely forgotten, but of course last year it seemed to be much more a part of the conversation here. But yeah, so this is good to hear. This is also good that you raise voice for those who don't yet have much buzz, much publicity here. I have to say I'm just excited for a lot of films that are in competition. Some films, of course, out of competition as well. For instance, some people were able today to get a film for the world premiere of one of the remaining Godard films that are out there somewhere.
Yes.
That people try to edit together after, following his instructions. I did not get one for that, and I wonder, those things are highly sought after. Today is also the day that I think the Almodovar film plays, but that also has only one screening, so it was very much something people wanted to see here, and also just the scarcity, that of course heightens the expectation for the film. But speaking of the competition, I'm really looking forward to Aki Kaurismäki's Fallen Leaves, because I love Kaurismäki's work, this deadpan humor that, of course, I think you cannot have a conversation about Kaurismäki's work without at least once saying the word deadpan. And even the way this is described on the website, it just says, this is a thought to be lost film. So I wonder what happened with that film. Like did he shoot it a while ago and then he just found it again? I don't know what this is supposed to be, but they also describe it as the fourth part of his Working Class trilogy. So I see a contradiction there as well. But nonetheless, I really love his work. Looking, of course, I think I speak for both of us. I look forward to L'été dernier, Catherine Breillat's new film,
Yes.
who's known for Amasseur, which in the English context is just called Fat Girl. The new Jonathan Glazer, of course, and I will skip the first screenings and wait until we can see it in the IMAX format, because this is one of the nice benefits of seeing these things at Cannes, that you can see certain things that you'd never be able to see in the IMAX format. You can see them here. Of course, I don't think they would be originally shot on IMAX, especially, films of such a small scale, but it's really good to have it presented in the best way possible. And Jonathan Glazer's new film will be of interest. I think we will cover that, on detail once we've seen it. But his films are always rather discomforting, and this one was shot in Auschwitz, and it stars Sandra Hüller, I think, who plays the wife of the Nazi corporal or something, and she's having an affair there in Auschwitz. I don't know much about this film, but of course this already, the production, like the place where they shoot, this is already rather,
It feels rather weighty.
Right. And Sandra Hüller is also in a film by Justine Trier here. So this is, because I'm from Germany, we sometimes joke, that in some editions you have certain actors who then sort of represent the country if they don't have their own film. Because even, there's a Wim Wenders film, but this is taking place in Japan, and I think it will be in Japanese. So there is not really, in a German film, in that aspect of production and, director, and like it doesn't all come together as one German film, but we have these aspects, and that's going to be interesting. Looking forward to the slow cinema master from Turkey, Nuri Bilge Ceylan, who won the Palme d'Or. I forgot the title. It's a bit embarrassing, but I think it was around 2014. Something with winter. I forgot the title now. But this is going to be interesting. And with him, of course, you always have these 3-hour films or even more. And while you meander through rural Turkey, you learn so much about society there, or at least that's, that seems to be an idea of his films, and I like that very much. Alice Rohrwacher has a new film. Ken Loach has a new film. So there's a lot to see this year, and I can't wait really for all these films. And then we have already seen 2 films.
We have already seen 2 films.
Or we've seen even more, I suppose, but you had a chance to see the restoration of Jacques Rivette's, what was the title? Can you remind me?
L'amour fou.
Right. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yes. So last year, it seems that Cannes opened up with a 4K restoration of a Jean Eustache film, which was around 3 hours and 20 or 3 hours and 40 minutes long. Also from the La Nouvelle Vague, new French New Wave. And this year we have another restored version of a film that was actually burned in a library. One of Jacques Rivette's opus of L'amour fou, which is based off of, vaguely based off of his understanding of André Breton's work, which is the final piece of his trilogy, his Nadja trilogy of the same name, L'amour fou. But it is his understanding, rather, of this sort of surrealist André Breton's writing and his understanding of love. I believe André Breton has said that he believes that there are 2 types of love. Love comme communication of hearts, and love, carnal love, which would be a division perhaps of even love and sex. This film was
this film was basically about a director who is really struggling in, commanding his crew and pulling this play together, really, because we see so much rehearsals and we see so much rehearsing, but nothing really comes together. And it's especially the first half of the film, I suppose, is quite a tour de force because things repeat again and again and again. You see people smoking all the time. They are really, they're really nerve wrecks, especially him, I suppose. And he also has this relationship that is, especially in the second half of the film, much more foregrounded, I thought.
Yes, in the repetition of their daily life, the protagonist and the theater director they have an intimate relationship that extends from the personal to the professional on stage. And in that repetition, they wind up somewhat strangling one another in their love and desire, in their capacity for harm and destruction.
Right, and this film seems to be a lot about language and how impossible language can be. And at one point in this film, it has this sort of free-spirited, episode where destruction becomes a sort of language in its own. And I thought that idea was very beautifully presented, as if destruction be a universal language that do not need any words. And yeah, I really, I must say the first 2 hours of this 4-hour film I found somewhat tiresome. But once this film shifted more into that direction, I could much more appreciate it. And I was overall very happy to have seen it, especially, in such a really beautiful rendering newly presented way in this restoration. So that was great. And then I saw a film that you canceled in the evening just because you've heard.
Off.
Yeah, you were scared off, and I still think that was a wise decision. Get a bit more sleep because you'll need your energy for the films of the upcoming days that are maybe more to your liking as well, even though I'm speculating here. But I'm talking, of course, about the opening film of the festival, Maïwenn's Jeanne du Barry, which stars Johnny Depp in the leading role and the director as well, Maïwenn. Maïwenn plays here, I think one of the last affairs of Louis
the 15th.
The 15th, okay. Louis the 15th is played by Johnny Depp, and you described it as a story where...
Yes, upon hearing it, I wondered if it was going to be a French rags to riches, but rather rags to class and societal...
I suppose, yeah. It's an ascension of this one woman who climbs the social ladder by marrying, so she starts off as this sort of courtesan very early. She then is, I think, she has certain link to the Barry. I think, is it a duke or is it a count? I don't know, but one of those titles. So she is part of that family, but then he sort of takes advantage of her as a courtesan. She's basically sold by him, or rented or let to other people, and then she earns him money as well in doing so. But by doing that, she can sort of guarantee her survival. And then she at some point is invited to see the king. And of course, this film is, it has a high budget. So we are at Versailles, and we are in the Salle de Miroir, or whatever they call it, the mirror.
Hall of Mirrors.
Hall of Mirrors, okay. And yeah, I must say, this is not a great film. of course, it's a difficult act, or it's a difficult pursuit to try to be sensual. When you approach sexuality, while also acknowledging that this here is forced work that she has to do often. But the film weirdly starts off with her being interested in eroticism and her reading these novels that, of course, that is such a cliche, that I'm sure it's based in, a reality. It has a true foundation, but this idea that, you read a novel and then there are your guardians or your superiors or something, that claim that now you are basically aligned with the devil or something, that you have conspired against the morale and morality. But this film overall, it really felt like AI generated. It was really painting by the colors that you could understand, now follows this scene because this is how such a film would play out. And I often had the feeling that I sort of could see what would happen, which is still fine. I don't expect a film to surprise me on a plot level, as long as there is an interesting form involved. But the problem here was that even the images felt very much like preconceived. I could see them on the storyboard, and now, of course, okay, this is how you just flesh them out. Was also, one of these Netflix films, like it is co-produced with Netflix, and it felt like a Netflix film or a TV film with very, very familiar images. And it's such a shame, I think, if you have these days, if you have access to, shoot in Versailles, maybe make better use of it and maybe present as images that we have not seen before. And so overall, there was a very disappointing film. There were, of course, this film was, again, a bit like the Corsini one, but overshadowed by the coverage as well. But I don't think we need to get too much into that.
Yeah, everyone, if you are interested, you can check the internet. The director seems to have accumulated a bit of controversy as of late.
And accumulated a lot of spit in her mouth, apparently. But we won't go into that because we want it to be a family programming here, of course. So, I think we have to stop here because we have to catch our first screening today, the Steve McQueen one. What can people expect for the next edition? I suppose I can talk about the Couré-Edard film. We talk about the Steve McQueen film, and we'll really maybe surprise you as well what else we catch on our way.
Yes, and it seems like I'll be playing a bit of catch-up on the 18th, but I will be very happy to share my viewing experience of Anselm in 3D and of Caligula, which is also a Cannes Classic restoration in its full version. It's an erotic historic film, and which has many. There will be much to talk about.
Right, with a lot of star power.
A lot of star powers. Malcolm McDowell. There's Helen Mirren, Peter O'Toole.
Really, in a sort of softcore porn, yes. I suppose. So that's going to be.
I even read something.
Juicy.
Yes, it will be juicy. It will be juicy. I shall report.
Okay.
But
look forward to that.
Yes.
And I catch you then, I suppose.
Okay. Well, stay tuned.
Stay tuned. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.